back to the channel, everybody. So from the intro, you have probably guessed we were going to be talking about launch control related topics, and tonight it's going to be what some people call rolling launch, rolling anti-lag, something along those lines, where if you're in a roll race, you activate a switch, the engine goes into a moving launch control. Technically, it could also be a 3-step pit limiter, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is that it is to build boost so that you can leave at maybe not full power, but a lot more than you would normally be able to for a given RPM. So the example in question that we have the video for, we're going to look at a Subaru WRX that is an STI swap, and then we will look at Haltech and see how you more or less do the same thing in the Haltech ECU, but on a SR20 stroker motor from MazWorks, from one of our other customers. Anyway, let's get right to the data, and we're going to start looking at what happened in that video. So here's the start of the run leading up to it. You can see that my engine speed was 4,800 RPM. It was in cruise timing, so basically 45 degrees of timing, 51 kPa, which is negative 14 inches or so. 20% throttle, I was in third gear. You can see down here, rolling launch switch, currently not active. In the Infinity and other ECUs, 0 is off, 1 is on, typically. Straight ahead here, we have the same ignition timing reference. We have the total timing trim, what the current timing is. Then the next two, whether you are on the ignition trim launch map, which is to the right, or on the rolling launch ignition trim, and then what fuel cut or spark cut is currently active. So in this case, the car didn't know what I was going to do. It's thinking main rev limiter, so 8,200 on the fuel cut, 8,300 on the spark cut. And as I proceed into the pull, you can see it starts to ramp up. I was holding it pretty even at 4,800. I had the parameters set, it had to be over 4,500, so that was why it was that high. Obviously, you're not going to get a 64, 66 to spool before that, so I was starting about there. But now we're starting to see something happen. The boost is 1.2 pounds. The switch is active. It's starting to pull timing. And as you can see, we're not on the launch trim map. It still shows 0. So we'll get to the map that was in use, and you can see how it was all working. But much like this other map, I had it set to where I didn't really want to go over 250 kPa. So I start pulling it, it starts pulling the timing out, and you can hear it in the video. It starts to kind of power out, almost sound like it's bogging. The boost is up, now we're 10 pounds, still really close to that 4,800 RPM. And the reason is that I activated the rolling ALS switch, which in this case is the e-brake handle that's not hooked up. So we're using that as the input, and you can see that it's locked the spark cut at 4860, and we're doing a pretty good job of bouncing around that. And got out of control there a little bit, but we get up to here. Now we're negative 20 degrees total. It's pulling 32 off the map, and we're 19.2 pounds. We get to the first bang that you would see. I think there was a small flash, which would be 20.2 pounds, 243 kPa. It pauses for a second, since it's really not running where it's making a bunch of power till you let go, but the turbo speed is up, the boost is there. So as soon as we drop that hammer, you notice the car lurches, and then the boost, before I let off, however, the boost is still up. It comes up 21.4, so basically where we wanted it to be, right around that 250 kPa. So perfect. Total trim 35 degrees basically. Total timing retard 22.8. Fuel cut was never used. Spark cuts right there. In the Infinity and in the Haltech both, you only get one to choose from. So I chose Spark Cut in this case. I'm not as worried about it loading up, but you can see the ignition map where it is was 12 degrees basically, and then pulled down. So math makes sense, right? And then I think I let off. Yeah, basically as soon as I let off, the car kind of jumps because it does have a little bit of that boost feeding in, and the switch is off and the boost drops, and we're back to normal. Now if we look at what I have set up in the wizard, we kind of looked at this in the short version of this. You would come in, you don't have to turn on the launch retard stuff. It kind of tells you that here in the rolling launch. Rolling launch enable. Yep, great, we checked it. In this case, I'm using analog 10. This also is using launch control, so the launch control target's there. That table is set up, as you can see, engine speed and manifold pressure. And then the rolling launch trim is just pressure. And basically, it's not going to go any higher than this last value, 250. Pulls 35 degrees out. That's basically the dream. I happen to know that that's kind of about where it was going to power out anyway, but if you wanted, you could make another column here and put, like, we'll say 275, or I guess that is the last column. You could make, point is, you can make a column and put it back to 0, more or less like what I did down here. That timing retard goes away. It's not going to be something that you have to contend with anymore. Doesn't really seem to be a safety issue, but you can do it that way if you want the peace of mind. Okay, so now we're going to switch to the Haltech software, and you're going to see kind of what we saw in the launch control videos. The Haltech makes it really, really simple. So let's switch to that one right now. Before we switch to the Haltech segment, one thing I had forgot to mention was the effect on power and torque that making 21 pounds will provide. So if you look here right now, we're at 4,863 RPM on a normal race gas pull. It makes 290 horsepower, 313 foot-pounds, and it's doing about 10.5 pounds boost at 4,863. That's in a normal third gear pull. Now if we move up to, I think it was about 5,800, pardon me, 5,800, where it does make 21.3 pounds, we see it makes 453 horsepower. Because it's past 52, the torque has started to drop, but it makes 410 foot-pounds. Now, for sake of argument, if it made that same 453 horsepower back here at 4,800, when we do the math, which is real simple, 453 times 52, and then divide by 4,863 or 4,900, it was bouncing around, you're going to see that it makes over 480 foot-pounds as soon as you let that go and it goes to full boost. So that's the main advantage of the rolling anti-lag, is that we can put that torque down while we're moving, and it's like having nitrous without ever having to fill a bottle. Anyway, on to the Haltech data. Let's look at that. So unfortunately, it was a couple laptops ago, and I don't have the log that corresponds to us testing it on the street. So you're going to just kind of have to go with me on it. But we were actually able to make 31 pounds against the rolling anti-lag, much like you see here on the launch control. In a rear-wheel drive car, this was a 2.2 liter car, 6870, makes 850 horse, trapped 160, and it is still a street car. Has a CD09 in it, or CD009, I guess. It was just too much. We couldn't get it to hook. It had two 55s on it at the time. Now it has two 75s. But you can see the strategy. Add 10% fuel for the launch control, pull a bunch of timing out. This one was pretty aggressive to get it to come up higher than where we were on the R33. But this was a built motor. The MazWorks Pro Street motor, I think it is. It has the really cool Neo head that gets away from the rockers. It was high compression. As I mentioned, it was a 2.2 liter, just really neato build in an S14. So when we get to the rolling anti-lag, lo and behold, it looks pretty much the same. And it works the same way. Basically, whenever the switch is active, that's the RPM that it picks, which is why I have a huge window here. We know that we're not going to get that thing to move before 4,000 RPM, so I didn't really worry about the timing down here at 3. You're not going to ever try that. Fuel correction, same thing. Just add 10%, and much like the R33, it instantly gets into the boost and just really snappy. It seems very, very difficult to beat how Haltech came up with their launch control strategy, and in this case, the rolling anti-lag. It works. And again, to keep it from going higher than I wanted, you can see in this table, since it is a table, I'm back to 0 degrees. So basically, it can't build any boost because the cut's gone, or the timing retard's gone. And same thing with the fuel enrichment. There's just no extra. So it might have made a little over 21.8. I can't honestly recall, but it wasn't much. We could make it go 31, but it got sketchy. So we ended that adventure with less boost for roll racing. He does not half mile stuff, but there are some local series where he can do, I think, 3rd mile roll racing. So he kind of needed it just to stage against the competition. Anyway, that kind of rolls up, if you pardon the pun, this episode on rolling anti-lag and rolling launch control. If it's content that you like and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. If you have a friend that might enjoy this tech or other race tech, as we are able to add it as the season will be starting in a few months, please consider sharing it. And if you need notified as new content is added, you can click the bell icon and YouTube will take care of that for you. And in the meantime, please hit the like button. Helps the channel, lets me know this is something that you guys want to see more of or less of, I guess, depending on the response. So anyway, guys, I hope you're all doing well. We'll talk to you later. Bye.